Watch this.
So I've been married for more than 15 years.
Congratulations.
I have been in a side relationship that my husband recently found out about. How can I convince my husband to let me keep the side dude?
Huh?
Well, first of all, he shouldn't. You need to change that convince word to manipulate.
Ooh.
We're not gonna play those games right now. You took a vow. You took vows. You stood before God or whatever it is you believe in and said that you were going to love this man in sickness and through health, for rich and for poor. You said that you committed whenever you took that vow. You committed to be there even in the hard times, even in the times where you were not fully emotionally fulfilled. You still took on that position to say that I'm going to have those conversations. I'm going to communicate. I'm not going to breach the trust in this marriage. You lack marital integrity. And if you lack marital integrity, you lack integrity as a person as well. So my next point to make is the audacity must be on sale right now for you to be able to say, how can I convince my husband, a man at that, convince my husband to let me still have a side relationship as if I did not betray this man, as if I did not hurt this man, as if I did not dishonor this man, as if I did not disrespect this man, and you want to ask for something? You want to ask for what it seems like more of a favor because it's only going to work in your favor. It's nothing that is going to work for him. I don't like when we play these games like this. You entered into what you two believe was a monogamous agreement, and you made it a polyamorous thing.
Ooh.
You did.
Ooh.
Let me tell you something else that you did. Let's talk about the lack of responsibility. I'm gonna tell you one more thing because I'm sure some other panelists have something to say. This is the problem that I have. Whenever you open up your marriage to something that somebody else did not consent to, if your side piece has depression or anxiety, anything like that, there's a spiritual exchange that takes place when you go sleep with somebody else that you now have invited into your home. So part of the reason why your marriage is not happy is because you were lusting over the fence to begin with.
Ooh.
You invited that into your marriage. You corrupted your home. The best thing for you to do, because he does have the right to leave you, the best thing that you could do, the responsible thing you can do, is either end that relationship on the side or leave that man alone and let somebody else find him.
Like, honestly, what was she thinking? Like, I'm being, like, real question here. What was she thinking? Like, I just came across this video, but, like, shout out to the lady that gave that lady actual advice as opposed to black advice. I can only assume that she thought because she was in an audience full of black people, she would be able to ask a very degenerate question. But what she got in return was a white response. And this goes out to all those cats out there, you know, that think they can shame me out of how I act and how I behave to make me act like this woman, or try to shame me into behaving like the man she's married to. That is the culture that I am against within the black culture, degeneracy culture. I mean, I can see her kind of getting away with it if she was like in a strip club or something, but it looked like a very respectable seminar. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people are like, Yoshi, you're putting words in our mouth again. We would never support something like that. But it's part of your ideology. You're putting the woman on the top and the man on the bottom. For years, you have been campaigning on the idea that women should act like men, and that they should have the equal rights like men, and that they should sleep around like men. Sex positive feminism, also called pro-sex feminism or sex radical feminism, is a branch of feminism that views sexual expression and sexual freedom as essential to women's liberation and overall equality. So by that first sentence, it would be liberation for that lady to not only be considered married to a man, but also have a side man. Because these people also say that being married is the equivalent of being a slave. Radical second wave feminism, where some radical feminists took a stronger stance, viewing marriage as an institution of patriarchal control that needed abolition for true liberation. Related views appear in radical feminist theory, marriage as long-term prostitution or exploitation of women's unpaid domestic emotional labor, with some equating it to forms of control akin to slavery. So going back to that woman, if she's already brainwashed by Marxist feminists, why does she want to be married if she's already come to the conclusion that marriage is a form of long-term prostitution? Because you have to keep in mind, in terms of this brainwashing, they live a life of contradictions. They don't want to be considered whores, but they want to live the life of a whore, but without being called a whore. This is why their position is ultimately determined with playing with words. Instead of calling it manipulation, because that would make her a bad person, she calls it convincing. Despite the fact that she sees marriage as a form of long-term prostitution, it's a justification for her to be a whore, but without being called a whore. Because the second you call her what she is, a whore, you're a sexist. But the second you say she's a strong, independent black woman who don't need no man, all of a sudden she's a woman. She's someone who's functionally sound in the mind. But despite the fact that women see marriage as long-term prostitution, they still have the desire to be equal to men. So if the men can be married to women and have sex with other women, it has to be fair for women to be married to men and have sex with other men. Notice how the equality is only aimed towards things that are ultimately negative, but it's never aimed at things that are ultimately positive. Anything that's ultimately positive is considered of whiteness. But not once will you ever see any of these people who are feminists or people that go around saying stop acting white would just simply say, why don't we stop looking at the negatives and stop trying to appropriate the negatives? If you see a political party of white people being pedophiles and getting away with pedophilia, why do you want to replicate that? And don't say you don't want to replicate that, because you do want to replicate that. Because you look at bad examples of men in relationships or marriages being promiscuous and say, well, if they can do it, we can do it too. So that means you're using that with other avenues, other attributes to justify it. So with the whole talk of the Epstein files, how many people do you think in this country have dropped their values, dropped their principles, and just went, well, if these guys can get away with it, why care about it? We should just be free to be able to do this kind of stuff. White people can get away with it. Black people can get away with it. Women can get away with it. So why care? But if you're looking at it purely through that lens, it's easy to justify why it's fine with adults being able to have sex with children. It's easy to justify why women should be as promiscuous as men. But if all you're doing is constantly pointing across the aisle, but you don't want to clean up in your own bedroom, don't be surprised that what you're surrounded by is pedophilia or sexual degeneracy, because your side made it a normalcy to begin with. So instead of looking at the negatives and saying, why can they get away with it? Let's look at the positives and say, why don't we replicate that? Because we can't replicate it. Because we have people out here that says when you see things that you try to replicate that are positive, that actually solves these issues, what's the first thing that come out their mouths? Oh, you're trying to be white. You're trying to be something that you're not. A person that practices monogamy. A person that just wants one wife or one husband. A person that does not want to have sexual relations with children. But notice how they never really get into the details of what is black. Just pay attention to what they demonize as white or being of whiteness, and then ask yourself what's on the other side. Because based off your own philosophy of what you demonize as white, this is what you mean. You hate individualism. You hate self-reliance. You hate those with hard work and persistent work ethic. You hate those who are objective, rational, linear thinkers. You hate those of nuclear family structure. You hate those who respect authority. You hate those planning for a future and delayed gratification. You hate those with politeness and being on time. You hate those who believe in justice where intent counts. You hate those who do not want to deviate from God. And yet somehow everything here that you demonize belongs only to white people, but it cannot go anywhere else. How is that not upholding white supremacy? But you love those who are dependent on others, lazy and expects others to do work for them. Replace objectivity with subjectivity as factual evidence. You hate family structure and want a state-sponsored family structure. You hate authority that stands in your way of a revolution of degeneracy. You love those who have no purpose in their lives, because then you can be the purpose in their lives. You love rudeness and love being late. You love injustice and yet call it justice. And you love anything that's against God, even if they're against you. Why would I side with you when siding with you means I have to break myself down with no chance of me being built back up? Because siding with you turns you into a person like this. A person who is so comfortable asking for advice in an audience of people that look just like her on how to cheat on her own man. But being against you turns into a person like this. And that's why I stand against you. Because having a majority like this is not easy to control. But having a majority of people like this, you'd have a field day and you'd feel like a god in your own backyard. Well, that's it for this video, guys. Leave a like, leave a comment, and I'll catch you on the next one. Until then, take care and be safe. God bless.